Hey everybody, and welcome on this Friday afternoon, 3 p.m. Eastern here on Rewind. My name is Chris Melissinos. I am the Principal Evangelist for the video game industry here at AWS. And every Friday, I will be here kind of digging through the best that classic video gaming has to offer, and understanding games industry's past to understand how we build games industry's future. And on today's episode of Rewind, this is going to be our first Let's Play. And I'm just going to be sitting here going through the back catalog of the mighty Sega Saturn. An incredible game machine that was released in the 1990s, and it's one of these kind of overlooked machines. If you're not somebody who's into classic gaming or has gone back to look at it, is definitely a library worth digging through. One of my favorite systems of all times. So why don't we go ahead and jump right in. Also, I should mention that if you join our stream today and go ahead and hit the follow button on either our YouTube page or our Twitch page and go ahead and enter a comment into the chat, you can be entered to go ahead and win. I'll pick one winner to win a launch title from my personal collection, one of the launch titles for the Sega Saturn. I won't reveal exactly which one it is yet, but maybe you'll see me playing it on today's episode. So with that, why don't we jump right in and talk about the amazing, incredible Sega Saturn. All right, so the Sega Saturn. The Sega Saturn was a console. So this was the follow-on console to the incredible Sega Genesis or Mega Drive that really gave Nintendo a run for their money and basically started what was known as the Bit Wars. So the Sega Saturn was the first machine that really kind of jumped us forward into the 32-bit era of gaming. And while it was understood that it was being developed at the time the PlayStation 1, the original PlayStation, was being developed, the Sega management kind of heard about the type of system that Sony was developing and understood that they needed to make sure that theirs was powerful enough to go ahead and compete in this next generation of brand new consoles, right? So again, it was released in 1995 in the United States, and it had a $399 retail price at its launch. It was in market from about 1994 to 2000, and it boasted two Hitachi SH2 CPUs running at 28.6 megahertz. Oh my goodness, just little bonus there, right? 28.6 megahertz. Those are the speeds we were dealing with back then. 2 megabytes of RAM with only 1.5 megs of VRAM, 512K of sound RAM, and two different visual display processors, right? VDP1 and VDP2. And the idea was that these two processors together would create this very powerful system that you could go ahead and deliver arcade quality games and do all these kind of special effects by one processor handling certain aspects of the scene, the other processor handling the other. The problem was, at this time, developing for multi-processor systems or multi-threaded systems was something that just really wasn't understood in the games industry, right? This is back in the mid-1990s when really, as the web, as we know it, was starting to emerge and become known and understood and start building on top of it. People outside of real, hardcore computer science and government and military and banks and computer companies didn't really have a good grasp of programming for multiple processors. So it was very difficult to really harness all of the power that the Sega Saturn had to offer for a lot of developers, right? So again, while it was really powerful as a machine, it was also a bit of a beast to go and wrangle. But those that could delivered games that were as close to the arcade as you could possibly get in that era, and they were brilliant. I should also mention that the sound was generated by the Yamaha YMF 292 chipset. And look, I was an initial and early and first adopter of the Sega Saturn. In fact, here I am. And there we go. There I am in 1995 receiving a Sega Saturn from my wife as a birthday present. You can see by the excitement on my face that I was ready to dig into the next level of gaming that Sega was providing to us. In my home, one of the I have a bunch of artwork, video game artwork that hangs up all over the house. One of these sets of prints actually comes from the Art of Video Games exhibition that I was part of and helped develop for the Smithsonian American Art Museum. And downstairs in my basement, I have these 4 sets of panels that I call my Sega wall. So it starts with the Sega Master System all the way over there on the left, to the Sega Mega Drive, and then to the Sega Saturn right there in the middle. And the 4 images that you see there are Tomb Raider, Panzer Dragoon 2 or 2, Panzer Dragoon Saga, and then of course SimCity 2000 right there at the bottom. So every time I walk in my basement, I have this beautiful wall of Sega nostalgia and memory kind of just staring at me as I head down there. So again, early adopter right from the beginning of the incredible Sega Saturn. I have some of that artwork that hangs in my house there. And I also was fortunate enough to be able to, or I was fortunate enough to have been asked to contribute to the incredible Supercade book that just came out by Van Burnham. And in discussing with Van the type of materials that you wanted for her book, she said, "What system do you want to go in and write for?" And I said, "Of course, I want to go ahead and write for the Sega Saturn." So there is the layout and the piece that I was able to contribute to Van's incredible book. So Van, congratulations on getting this one out. Super excited to have it in my hands, and super excited for everybody to go ahead and read the incredible work that Van has put together with a bunch of different contributing authors as well. So yeah, Sega Saturn, really near and dear to my heart. But let's go ahead and take a look at, in this era of marketing and excitement around video games, Sega had a really interesting and unique ad campaign that launched. So let's go ahead and get a little bit of the Sega Saturn launch advertisements.
We are 5 years away from entering the 21st century. Humankind stands on the edge of the interactive age. You have come a long way.
Now think about this, right? They're talking about it being, 1995. It's the dawn of a new millennia. Technology is going to enthrall us, and what's going to be incredible out there. Of course, now we have this dancing cat running around here.
Sports and arcade gameplay.
Very, very representative of its era. But now here we go. Going to jump into some of the gameplay in just a moment, and that should probably be happening there.
Sega Saturn. It's how you play the game.
Just look at those incredible graphics of that era, scaling sprites and scaling environments we just hadn't seen. Full motion video that wasn't so grainy, you had to squint to actually see and understand what it was that you were looking at.
Saturn. Play your games in the 21st century and leave the rest of the world behind.
So that was the launch ad for the Sega Saturn. Again, in that really bombastic era of the 1990s, when Sega was really amping up their rhetoric and their messaging around their products. Right? They already had Sega does what Genesis does what Nintendo don't. Welcome to the next level. And they continued and extended that kind of brand philosophy and kind of image with the Sega Saturn. So that's a brief intro to the Sega Saturn, my history with it, a little touch of the marketing and advertisement that accompanied the Sega Saturn. And why don't we go ahead and just jump over into some gameplay, and we'll talk through just some of the hidden gems inside of the Sega Saturn library. All right, and to do so means that I'm going to shut off our commercials and I'm going to fire up my Elgato here. So what I use when I'm playing on my older consoles, right, is I try to go ahead, always play on original hardware. And what I do is, in the case of something like a Sega Saturn or a Dreamcast, I use what's called an optical drive emulator, right, or an ODE. And so what an optical drive emulator lets me do is take the games that I own, rip them down to images that I can go ahead and then run on a single machine. So that way I keep my collection in pristine condition. I don't have to worry about scratching. I don't have to worry about wear and tear. And it lets me go ahead and quickly jump in and sample games from my entire library without having to dig them out all the time. And in game preservation, this is a common thing to do. And of course, as some of you may know, I do work in video game preservation. And so it gives me, again, the ability to switch quickly between different games. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up my list of favorites. I'm going to talk through some of what I think are among the Sega Saturn's best content, right? So here we go. We're going to go ahead and jump right in. And of course, we get our lovely Sega screen there. All right, so the first game that really kind of blew me away when I started collecting for the Sega Saturn was, of course, the Virtua Fighter games. Now, when Virtua Fighter was originally released for the Sega Saturn, unfortunately, it wasn't the greatest conversion. It was one that was a bit rushed out the door. And it didn't have the same kind of textures that the arcade had. So it was a lesser than version of the game. And so what Sega did is they went back and they went ahead and rebuilt the game and put textures back in and basically sent everybody that registered their Sega Saturn at the beginning a copy of Virtua Fighter Remix. So we're going to go ahead and jump right into my copy of Virtua Fighter Remix. And so remember, at the time, we dealt with things like that were approximately the same that the arcade, had to offer. Not necessarily the exact same game, but this one got really close, right? This one allowed us to go ahead and get close to having, again, that arcade experience right at home. And you can see it's got, it's a lower resolution, but the frame rate remains really high. Now, if there are games you would like to go ahead and have me play as we're going through today's rewind session that you see in the list, go ahead and let me know in the chat. And here we go. Let's go ahead and jump right in. So, also, let me know if the mix, if anyone is checking us out right now, if the mix sounds good. I believe that it's pretty all right. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to drop the audio just a little bit on that there. All right, the characters I like playing with are Jackie, right, and Sarah. So they've got really good, not just finishing moves, but great kind of recovery moves as they're coming out of fights. So let's see if... Now, it's been a while since I've played, so let's see if I can get a couple of wins in here. Let me see here. Hold on. No, I didn't. Oh my God. Okay, yeah. Let me go ahead and take a look over here. All right, there we go. Yeah, we got this one. All right. Yeah, so again, we didn't have really access to 3D games in this era. So the Sega Saturn was the first system where we really had that. A little jump and a kick there. And let's see if I can get him knocked down. There we go. And jump on him again. Oh, and you see how I went ahead and missed him there. If you get that timing right, it's super satisfying. And let's get a couple of kicks in and a couple of KOs. So this was the first time, again, we had experienced a game that was really close to what the arcade had to offer. And, Sega went ahead and released the original version with the Saturn. It wasn't up to their quality. The consumers basically let Sega know. And they went ahead and made amends by creating a really good, competent version with the textures in place and everything, and sent them out to anybody that had registered for it. So it was really wonderful to get a game in the mail from Sega that solved and fixed the problems, right, that the original game had. So, all right, let me go ahead and just clear Jeffrey out here. And then we'll jump into our next game. And right on his chest. And then another kick and another. Oh, I missed it there. And let's see. All right, here we go. And another KO there. All right, great. And of course, you always have, you know, your fight pose at the end of them. So that was Virtua Fighter Remix. So I'll go ahead and reset my system here. And we'll go ahead and jump into the next Virtua Fighter game that really went ahead and demonstrated that in the right hands, the Sega Saturn was just really an incredible piece of hardware. And that is the Virtua Fighter 2 game. Virtua Fighter 2 improved on the original Virtua Fighter game in just about every way possible, from graphics, characters, to moves, to frame rate, just everything, right? So, you know, Sega was learning how to really most effectively use their system and go ahead and build better and better games that were closer to the arcade. And when Virtua Fighter 2 dropped, that was massive, right? Everybody just could not believe that that we had this close to an arcade conversion in the home. And of course, that also lined up with other games of the era like Virtua Cop, which I can't go ahead and play because I need a CRT to be able to go ahead and play those games. Can't do it through just you know, a flat screen TV today, right? Really required a CRT, but here we go. So now we've got the mighty Virtua Fighter 2. Yay, everybody. All right. Yes, a little applause for Virtua Fighter 2 coming up here to the fighting stage. All right, let's stop that audio and let's jump into a little bit of Virtua Fighter 2. Again, you know, more elaborate backgrounds, more elaborate environments, more characters to go ahead and play with. So, but I'm still going back. This time, let's go ahead and pick Jackie's sister, Sarah Bryant. So you'll see here just the, again, the fidelity and quality of the game is just much different than even the Virtua Fighter Remix. Oh, there we go. Yes. And that's what I love about both Jackie and Sarah is they have really good range attacks, and they've got really good, like, kind of combos and can pop out. I'm going to shut my music off here. So we just hear the music of Virtua Fighter 2. All right, here we go. Ready? And jumping out of his way, and then come in with those snaps. Look at that. Oh, it's going to just be nothing but a brutal beatdown. Oh my God. Yeah. Hey, all right. That's, yeah, but again, you can see, again, the backgrounds also have 3D assets in them. It's no longer just a flat skybox. The stages seem to float a little bit. Everything is texture mapped. Again, you know, developers were learning how to go ahead and use the platform and develop for it. And it just took time, you know. Oh, look at that. Just awesome KOs. That is a little bit of button mashing, but also those are the combos that those characters play. So, again, if there's anybody that's watching, if there are games that you would like to see that are in my collection, make sure you go ahead and pop something into the chat and let me know. And let's see. Oh, there we go. And we're going to jump again. And then we're going to move on to our next one. Ah, that's it. 2 KOs. How about that, gang? Oh, yes. Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah. All right, let's go ahead and back out of Virtua Fighter 2. So Virtua Fighter 2, again, really built on top of the original Virtua Fighter and Virtua Fighter Remix that Sega went ahead and sent home to their adoring fans, All right, let's go ahead and pop in and take a look, at another awesome launch title. So I think this was awesome because it was a different take on the action platformer, right? Action platformer genre. And it's a game called Clockwork Knight. Again, remember, it's important to remember that at the time in which we saw these games, C would be Clockwork instead of all the way up there at the top. So, you know, we hadn't really seen true 3D platformers. We hadn't seen true, you know, kind of texture mapping on those bigger 3D environments, right? We were blown away by what Nintendo did with Star Fox, right? And creating that game. This was the first 3D game that we were playing on the 16-bit consoles. There were other 3D-esque or 3D-ish type of games on the 16-bitters. There were also a couple of 3D games, but the biggest one that really kind of established 3D as a possibility space for the consoles was Star Fox. So here we go. And we moved directly to the first of the 32-bit generations. And now we're playing a platforming game that is actually 3D in nature, right? And not pseudo 3D or kind of to look like it, like Donkey Kong Country was, right? We saw that, we were blown away, but as you know, those are 3D objects that are rendered as 2D sprites, right? They're just the images of those things. So Clockwork Knight had this elaborate setup and a musical number in the front. It's introducing all these new characters to it. It had a really lively and fun soundtrack to it as well. While not the greatest game, it holds a bit of a place in my heart because it was one of the first games that we had, and it was just something we hadn't seen before, and you'll see what I mean when I say that. So you are moving around through Betsy's room, and you're gonna have to fight all the different toys in Betsy's room to basically clear the level. And so we're gonna go ahead and move forward. We don't have to see all of those cut screens. And so here we go, little jaunty tune here, and here is your character Peppercho. I am just moving a window around here so I can make sure that I do have a chat window popped up in case anybody has any questions, and we can go ahead and see the full screen. And there we go. So you go ahead and you kind of use your key to wind up these toys. They have different amounts of hits that they can take, but you can see that these are not just 2D objects. These are all 3D objects, and you can see the sides of the blocks and the boxes as we're moving forward. And it's got multiple pathways. So here we go. You can see, when I jump up, you can see the top of the the ledge or the platform that I'm jumping onto. And again, remember, we didn't have this in games before. So all of this was really new and just really amazing looking, right? Couldn't believe we were getting this. All right, there we went, opened up the box to this bonus level. And as I go ahead and jump in, let's see. Oh, of course I missed that one and I've got hit there. And let's see, I'll just run past this one quickly. And you can see, so you can see, with all the signs that are up there, and it's giving you kind of hints or information about the game. And let's see, I'm just going to jump back out of this box and show you one of the environmental pieces that, originally got me when I was first playing this game, when it was a brand new release. Look at all the confetti popping out. Just really whimsical and a lot of fun to go ahead and play through. Good family game, right? Good family game. Oh, we had those pencils there as spikes, so you have to jump. The one problem with the game, again, because it was so new, we hadn't really experimented with this type of stuff before. Everything felt super floaty, right? So control was always a bit of an issue with this game, but as developers learned how to use the system more effectively, it became better. Now watch this. Here's the playhouse here that if you move forward, now it falls down because it's a 3D object. Again, we didn't expect to see that in these games. Let me just go ahead and get here to the end of the level. And you could jump onto, I should have actually jumped before I stepped onto the grid there, because then you can unlock bonuses by doing so. So again, this was one of the first times we had a 3D level, a 3D action platformer that was trying to do something different than what we had seen before. But it wasn't the only one in the launch lineup for the mighty Sega Saturn. There is another one that we have that is actually it's one of my favorite games for the system. It's called Bug, and we're going to go ahead and jump into that in just a moment here. So let's make our way down to Bug. And again, if there's any if there are any requests that people have that may be watching the stream that want to see played, make sure you go ahead and pop something into the chat there and let me know. And if you go ahead and you hit the follow button today and post a comment into the chat, you'll be entered to win a copy, one of the launch games from the Sega Saturn lineup from my personal collection. So If you would like a Sega Saturn game, make sure you go ahead and hit that follow button and just pop a quick message into the chat there. All right, so again, as I said, Clockwork Knight was one of the first 3D games. And that wasn't entirely true. We had another one called Bug. And this one not only used 3D objects just in the side-scrolling portion of the game, but this was actually one of the first games where we're moving in and out of that Z-plane, right? In and out of the foreground and the background, all seamlessly in a single environment. And again, too, right, this was one of the first systems, really, I mean, the TurboGrafx 16 was the first system that actually had a CD-ROM at home. This was the first integrated CD-ROM based game system that we had. So they really took advantage of the Redbook audio. They took advantage of the advanced audio processor that the Sega Saturn had and went ahead and provided a lot of voice clips and things like that throughout the game just to make it a bit more dynamic and take advantage of audio that other systems it was competing with could not take advantage of, right? So we'll watch a little bit of the Bug opening here. And again, right, it's important to remember that this is really indicative of the era in which this game was created and launched, right? The animation is a bit suspect, right? The 3D modeling, maybe not as complex as we're used to today, but they were trying to establish this look, feel, and format for a brand new set of games, a brand new way to deliver video games, which was in 3D. Versus traditional 2D, which is where the bulk of game developers had spent their careers, right? It's focused on 2D games. So now we're moving an entire set of artists and developers from the 2D world into 3D. And so these are the first kind of steps into 3D gaming in the console era. All right, so let's go ahead and jump right into Bug here. Insectia Scene 1. And again, what I love about this too, it's the characters are pretty endearing. The control is still a bit floaty. The hitboxes are not quite fair, but you can see what developers were trying to do here with these characters. So even the little gem explosions there have some shading and depth to them. But remember, you're looking at a game that's running in 1.5 megs of video RAM. Right? So really, really small amount of memory for all the things that it's trying to do here. And of course, off the edge here, you can see you're at the edge of the level. There's the sky box behind it in a very low resolution, right? So not the greatest visually impactful game overall, but really a ton of fun when you consider the limitations that the developers had during this era. Right? The variety of sound effects, you have, voice audio clips. We just didn't really hear that on the regular in the 16-bit era of games. All right, let's see if I can jump up here and grab some of this bug juice. That's your health there. Now we've got rotating platforms here in the background, right? Which is really cool. So it takes different sections of the level that are not accessible unless you go ahead and hop on those and time them correctly. So it gives a little bit of variance. Moving vertically here. So now we see a top down of Bug, right? This one kind of blew us away. Especially, look, he's walking behind the waterfall and you can't see him, right? We just didn't have those things. So, all right. So here we've got Bug picking up some stuff out of the secret area here. And we're going to make our way back around to the end of the level. Let's see if we get past the end of the level here. But you can see it's just a game that's full of charm, full of new technologies that they were trying to perfect and build, and really a product of its era, but an endearing one. So, all right, let's get on this platform here. And let's see what this has to offer. My goodness, it's been a while since I played some Bugs, so yeah, there you go. Let's see if I can get around it. So I think what I need to do is jump there and then try to, let's see if we can do it. Oh, I can't do it. So I think what you need to do is jump right at the edge here and then make your way onto that platform. So let's see if I can get it. Let me try it right here. Let's see. Come on. And there we go. 1, 2. Ah, almost. Try one more time here. And let's see. Oh, I can't get it. Basically, you need to grab the edge of that mushroom that you're hopping on, and then when you bounce above the top there, move quickly over to the right to get onto that ledge. And I'm not going to waste another 20 minutes trying to go ahead and do that. But this is bug, right? Again, it's trying to figure out what mascots. Yeah, there we go. Oh no, that wasn't what I meant to do. I meant to do that. So that was bug, right? And this is what developers were trying to do, is trying to figure out how to best use these new tools and these new systems to create new experiences that we hadn't experienced before. All right, so let's go ahead and get out of playing some bug right now and jump into yet another gem from the catalog of Sega Saturn titles. Oh, there we are back at our screen, and now we're back at our awesome space-based interface for the Sega Saturn. And we'll go ahead and pull up my library here, and let's see what's next. Let's see what's next. All right, so let us see. How about we're gonna move down here and look for, okay, let's look at another launch title that everyone was really anticipating, right? That its ambitions outpaced or outstripped the capabilities of the system, which was great, and that is Daytona USA Racing, right? So let's go ahead and check this one out too. But again, you know, because we were just, I just see that on our Game Tech channel on Twitch, it seems to be showing us with a rerun, and we are not streaming a rerun. This is brand new, so we need to fix this for next time. YouTube, I don't think we have that that issue right now, but we seem to be having that problem on our Twitch channel, so we're gonna have to go ahead and fix that again. All right, I'm gonna stop the audio here. I'm not gonna bother with it now. We'll fix it for next time. This is not a rerun. This is our live channel here. So yeah, let me see if I can take care of that while we are doing this. Can you do it? I don't know if I can do it and have it stop saying that it's a rerun, because it is not a rerun. My goodness gracious. Okay. Let's see. What do we have here? We don't have any of that information here, do we? Here we go. And now it's done, and now it is not pre-recorded. It is happening live. So, okay, great. Actually, no, it didn't fix it. All right, well, we're gonna leave that for now, and we'll go ahead and fix it for the next time. Okay, so Daytona USA, this game, again, one of the launch ones, and everybody had been waiting to see this game show up, right? And they did, again, a really wonderful job of working with a really limited console compared to, well, let me take that back. It wasn't a limited console. It was the most advanced console that we had at the time. But it was all brand new. Learning to program for multiprocessors was just something game developers were not used to. So it took a while before game developers were able to eke all the power they really could out of the Sega Saturn. So, but let's go ahead and take a look. Actually, we'll look at the original Daytona USA Racing that launched, and then the fall, which was Daytona USA. Okay, so here we go. We'll go ahead and choose this. Of course, iconic music. Anybody that is a Sega fan of any amount of time knows that it knows these songs, especially the Blue Sky song, which we're going to hear in just a little bit. Of course, the Hornet is the car you want, and we should hear a little bit of Rolling Start. I'm going to pump up the audio a little bit on that. There it is, the Rolling Start. And now we're going to go ahead and jump into, a little bit of Daytona USA Racing. Oh my goodness gracious. So now what you can see is, well, number one, super floaty, right? Low frame rate doesn't help this game. And then you can also see the draw distance that is on here. Now we're going to see the ridge pop in. You can see it pop in kind of one piece at a time, right? It's so, you know, unfortunately, this was kind of the thing that reviewers focused on when they first saw the game, was just the insane draw distance that the Saturn had that other, you know, that they didn't expect. So they didn't want to see all that pop-in happen. But still a super playable game, and it was better than not having, you know, as Sega, a Daytona racing at home. So after a while, you became kind of, if not immune, you ignored a little bit the fact that stuff was popping and just paid attention to the action right there in front of you. Of course, we were also blown away by the fact that the cars actually took on damage as you raced, and the reflection of things like the sky in the windows of the car. Really, really awesome, you know? So super blown away by this. And you can hear, you know, once again, them taking advantage of that CD audio and everything from the sound effects to the music. We just hadn't heard this stuff before, right? At least on home consoles. PCs, you know, we started to get a bit of that, but we just didn't have it in the home console space. You know, I don't think I've ever cracked like the top 5 on Daytona. One of the other things too, you're right, is all the kind of advanced animations and things like that that Daytona had to offer, like the pit crew. So I'll just go pit here right now, just so we can see what the pit crew. Oh, that's right. You had to stay on the. Oh, I missed it. I've never done that before either. If you don't stay on the pavement, the pit crew avoids stopping your car. So basically, I just went ahead and slid through that whole damn pit stop without ever getting to see the pit animations there. So let me see if I can keep my damn car on the road here. And there we go. So now we've got our pit animations there happening. So really, really neat, really, really cool. And oh, and I'm also so sorry for our friends over there at Twitch that think that this is a repeat stream. This one is not a repeat stream. So we may have to go back and do this one again, just so we can go ahead and bring in more people to watch the Sega Saturn recap. So there we go, Sega Saturn. Again, one of the amazing launch titles. Let's see if I can go ahead and smash my car a little bit here and see that crash animation. So nope, couldn't do it there. All right, so that was Sega Saturn USA, or Daytona USA rather. And now we're going to go ahead and jump into the follow-on to it, which improved some of the peculiarities, the quirks that endear the original Daytona USA to those of us that started playing Sega Saturn back in the beginning. So here we go. Let's go ahead and jump into Daytona USA Championship Circuit Edition. Now, the one thing I will say that I didn't care for in the follow-on to the original Daytona was they changed the music quite a bit. I like the original Daytona music the best. Blue Skies and Rolling Start and Let's Go, all that stuff, really, really fantastic music. Music that you would actually listen to, you know, in your car. If you were a big nerd, you know, like I am. So here we go. We're going to jump into a little bit of Daytona USA Championship Edition and see the difference between the two. So already you can see the textures on the car are a bit cleaner. While they still pop in, the draw distance is a little further back. The music, take it or leave it. Not my favorite, but that's all right. All right, here we go. Championship Circuit Edition. We're going to jump right in here. We'll go ahead and do the arcade. Hear that kind of heavy drum and beat to it. It's not what I want out of my Daytona. Let's go ahead and pick Dinosaur Canyon. Let's choose different. Hornet, of course, always the best. Automatic transmission because I don't have time to mess with manual. And yeah, let's go ahead and drop into this. Here we go. Oh, just so unfortunate right now. You hear that rev up a little bit? And I mean, initially, automatically, look at how much cleaner the textures are, how much more detail there is in the environment overall, right? And the draw distance is much further out. So stuff is still popping in, but it's popping in much further away than the original Daytona, right? So yeah, and you know, you think about it, they've got 20 cars on here as well. And that's something I used to talk about too in terms of the power of these machines. They're like, well, you know, the system also has to manage 20 cars moving around the playfield, right? That's no easy feat. Oh, and there's the crash animation. And of course, the cars taking damage is just something we love to see, right? On these older games. It's one place that games like Gran Turismo really couldn't go because initially, you know, car manufacturers didn't want their cars being represented as being damaged or dinged up in these games. So oh my goodness, look at me sliding. It's like I'm on ice. So those games that basically bent more towards realism versus these arcadey ones, right? We could get away with more in the arcade type of ones, not necessarily fully licensed to automobiles, but approximations of famous cars and things of that nature. And yeah, what was also really cool was the camera. I didn't show it on the other one, but you could go ahead and rotate through different camera positions to give you, you know, a different point of view based on where you were and how you wanted to play. And we're seeing, you know, shadows in the tunnels, and we're hearing the audio sound different as we move through the tunnels. And I tried to slide around that corner, and I did a terrible job of doing so. But yeah, again, the more developers had their hands on the system, the more power they were able to eke and get better kind of approximations of arcade games here at home. So we had, right, the awesome Daytona USA. We had the improved Daytona USA Championship Edition. But now let's go on to the game, the racing game on the Sega Saturn that really kind of set it apart. And that is Sega Rally Championship. And this is a game where they really kind of hit their stride in terms of understanding how to get the most out of this incredible machine. So we'll jump into that real quickly, and we'll go on to a couple of others. I want to make sure that I hit a few others as well. So we want to hit Sega Rally Championship. And let's see, Sega Rally Championship. There we are. The audio was great. The controls were really tight on this. The environments and courses you raced on were really fantastic. So again, what we're going to witness here is kind of the culmination of the work, time, and effort that Sega put into learning how to wring as much power out of the incredible Sega Saturn. So here we go. Oh, listen to that music. Woo! Right now, this is a case where you do have licensed, you know, licensed cars that you're going to be racing here. So here we go. All right, Sega Rally Championship. We'll just go straight into arcade mode, and we'll just do Championship 1. This has probably been, oh, I don't know, 20 years since I really played Sega Rally Championship. So let's see how I do here. I'm not, not making any excuses for it, but all right, here we go. You can hear that 2, 1, go. And here we are. Look at the speed that you kick off at, right? So you can see already just the frame rate is super high compared to Daytona. You've got you have these scrolling hills too that are really great. The draw distance, while you can still see some of it out in the distance there, it's so much better than what we had with Daytona. But of course, the courses lent themselves to hiding some of that pop-up, right? So when you have a course that has a lot of bends and turns to it, you can hide the pop-up in the draw distance, those assets coming in behind those turns. So it looks more seamless, and it looks more complete and solid as a world. But yeah, this plays so much better and controls so much differently than Daytona. Like here you go into slides. Oh, oversteered right into there. And I love the announcer too. You hear things like long, medium, right, baby, and stuff like that. So yeah, just really just amazing. And it's incredible to think of how far we've come in just such a short period of time, right? This was, well, I say just a short period of time, right? It feels like that because I still remember getting this system, right? All right, so now real quickly, look at the difference between these two courses. We had the desert course, now we have this forest course. A little bit more built out in the background, a little bit more in the skybox there. We have different road that we're traversing right now, which changes the way the car operates, right? And slides around those courses. So you have to really, you're constantly changing up your strategy and your skills around playing this game based on the course that you're on and the surface that you're driving on. And am I going to hit the checkpoint? Let's see. Maybe. Oh, no. No, no, no. No, that's the worst. You're going to see the checkpoint around the corner. And there it was. And I totally missed it. Oh, no.
Life force is running out.
Exactly right. So... all right, I also realized that we don't have anybody logged in to watch the stream because it shows that we are streaming a rerun. And so I apologize to anybody that saw that. This is one of the things that we need to go ahead and work out in our setup here, right? We're a new channel, right? Or a new show. We are working the kinks out as we go forward. All right, so we talked about some of the racing games. We talked about some of the launch games. Let's go ahead and jump into the successor to one of the launch games. One of my favorite games of all time, Panzer Dragoon Zwei, or 2, as you will. And let's see, let's jump down here to our Panzer Dragoon 2 game. And, when I first saw this game, and I think Panzer Dragoon may be the first game that I played outside of the Virtua Fighter game that came with the console. And that was just extraordinary. It had this beautiful orchestral soundtrack. It had a 3D environment which you can look in 360 degrees, had a really compelling story to go along with it. But 2, this game raised the bar on every single thing that the original Panzer Dragoon did. So that's why I chose this as the game for us to take a look at now. All right, so here we are. And let's see, we won't go through the cut screens. Let's just go ahead and jump right into this awesome gameplay here. Now, this game originally was a game that I featured in the Art of Video Games exhibition because I had been describing the difficulty that game developers had in creating 3D games moving from a 2D environment. And one of the things that you can see here is, we have a world that's made of polygons that's up close to us, but behind it is a skybox. And a skybox is basically a picture or a texture map that sits outside of the field of play that creates distance or creates an elaborate environment while not requiring much processing at all on the part of the system, right? It's just displaying a static 2D image in this 3D box. But in Panzer Dragoon, because the skybox was also on the horizon, visible on the horizon, the developers had to go ahead and make it seem like it was a 3D object. So in areas where you're flying and you've got you're actually moving left to right, what you'll notice is the skybox will actually be cut into these slivers, these very thin, narrow bands of textures. And by sliding those textures up and down, it can be made to look like the entire world is moving left to right, when in fact all they're doing is cutting up the image that you're seeing into smaller pieces and then sliding them up and down to go ahead and make it look like the background is bending or tilting left to right, when in fact it was not. So it was all of these tricks that developers needed to go ahead and discover and build upon in order to make a 2D asset look like a 3D one in this brand new medium of 3D games. So again, this game, while we're on rails, right, we're kind of progressing towards a defined, ending here. I can actually look in 360 degrees around me and my dragon to go ahead and pinpoint enemies and kind of figure out where they are. And then you take off into the sky, right? So, here we have a big a big enemy and it's just knocking down environmentals. You can't go ahead really and do anything with him there. Some options, you could blow up in the scene as well. So, you know, once again, we had not really experienced this before. You know, it was kind of Star Fox, which had that forward trajectory, forward momentum, and we could do some stuff left to right, but certainly not looking 360 degrees around as we played. So now off to the skies you go, and you get struck down. And now the next part of the narrative continues along. So yeah, Panzer Dragoon, from the orchestral music, the variety of enemies, the size of them, the scale of them, the fact that you can take off from the ground into the sky. Just a wonderful, wonderful adventure, and definitely a game you do not want to miss if you're collecting for the Sega Saturn. All right, we only have about 10 minutes left in the stream, so I'm going to go ahead and ditch out of Panzer Dragoon 2, and let's go ahead and jump into another classic game here for the Sega Saturn. So let's pull up this list and let's see what we should try next. Let me see. We already did some Bug. We did some Clockwork Knight, Daytona. We had all of that in there. Okay, one of my favorite genres of games are shoot 'em up games, or shmups as they're called. Galactic Attack is just a fantastic shoot 'em up game, and one of the things that I like about this game, so my favorite shmup of kind of the earlier era of arcade games is Raiden, right? And Raiden 2 was great, but Raiden was, you know, kind of the big one. Xevious was also around. It used a reticle, just like they do here in Galactic Attack. Which means that if you're targeting, one of the strategic things you have to do with a reticle that's moved that far away from the player, and as you'll see here, is that you have to plan your attack for things that are on the ground, because if your reticle has moved past where they're located on the ground, you won't be able to target them, but they'll still be able to attack you. So you'll see what I mean as I go ahead and jump in and play. So here we go. We've got our shooters. You can see I have a reticle flying ahead of me. So any objects that are coming in from the ground, if I can go ahead and hit them with a reticle, I can fire down at them before they kind of hit the same plane that I'm on, and attack me head on. But if where you're targeting has already passed by the reticle, you can't target them anymore, which means you're at a disadvantage. The reticle basically only gives you half the screen to select the enemies that you want to fire your missiles at, or, you know, not just your straight shot here, right? And let's see, yeah, that's me moving a little bit to the side because, oh my goodness gracious, it's been a little while. All right, so here we go. There's power up your lasers. So yeah, all of these tanks that are on the ground, if I don't target them now, before they pass the reticle, they can still fire up at me. Man, they can still fire up at me while I can't fire back at them, right? So it just adds another layer of complexity to the game, right? Another layer of strategy to what could ostensibly be considered it's a generic shoot 'em up. It's not, right? There's a lot that you have to think about as you're playing through this, and fortunately, now I'm talking while I'm trying to play, so I'm not doing a really good job here. All right, so let's see. Oh, why don't we go ahead and get out of Galactic Attack? Oh, since we only have about 7 minutes left, we want to make sure we get to at least another game or two. So that was Galactic Attack. Again, really, really awesome. One of the things that the Sega Saturn was really known for was its 2D games. I mean, it really was designed to be a 2D powerhouse of a machine, but it was the original Sony PlayStation that changed the way Sega had to think about the architecture they were about to unleash, right? And so in the earliest Sega Saturn models, if you open them up, you'll see that there is a riser inside of the system with a daughter board that sits on top that has a separate processor, the second Hitachi SH2. And the reason that that board exists was, after the architecture was pretty much locked, Sega realized that they needed more horsepower in there to produce really good competitive 3D games. And so they added a second processor much later into the design of the Sega Saturn. And the way that they, again, delivered that was by creating a separate breakout card that would plug into that motherboard. Every version of the Saturn beyond the original, the very first ones had the daughter cards removed, the secondary cards removed, and everything was baked into a single motherboard. Right. So again, while there are some really incredible and awesome games that were made in 3D in its era, it really was more of a 2D powerhouse of a system. Of course, I realize I'm showing you most things that are 3D except for Galactic Attack. So I'm going to go and find, let's find another one or two more to touch on here. Let's get all the way up to Shinobi Legions is an awesome one to show. Of course, we have all the Street Fighter movies in here too, and the Virtua Fighter ones. You know what? Let me jump into a bit of, let's see. What are we going to jump into? Oh, you know what? I showed this on another show. Let's go ahead and jump into this one. This is Tempest 2000. So this was, again, this is a game that's been on many different systems, and for good reason, because it's probably the best implementation of Tetris. Sorry, that was just terrible. There was the best implementation of Tempest outside of the original version of Tempest. So I'll just go ahead and pop this here to the backup card. And what made this one such an amazing game too, not only the visuals, but the soundtrack for this game. Just crazy. So let's go ahead and jump into a bit of Tempest 2000. This one really is a hidden gem. If you don't own it on any other machines you collect for the Sega Saturn, this is a good one to have. So I'm going to jump right into the Tempest 2000, and let's see, here we go. And we'll just pick this level here. And now we are dropped in. You can hear that soundtrack in the background. The visual effects for this game were really fantastic. Here's some of the audio that pops up. The bonus levels are really great on this too. And if you get your hands on the soundtrack, it is great to this day. It's a soundtrack that makes its way into some of my rotations, and I know other people that love it as well. While a product of its era, it still is just really amazing as a set of music here. So you can see no slowdown. This game was first on the Atari Jaguar. Probably the best game for the Atari Jaguar of the commercially released ones. At the time that it was a viable system, I would say, but just an excellent game on any system that has it. And that is Tempest 2000. Again, just a banger of a game. All right, and let's maybe jump into one more real quickly here. Let's see, what shall we, let's look at one of the only real Sonic games that made its way onto the system. And this one was called Sonic 3D Blast. It isn't the greatest version of Sonic, but it is a good, competent Sonic game that also made its way onto the Sega Genesis. So let's go ahead and pop that up. That's Sonic... where are we? Sonic 3D Blast. So this was an isometric game that was pseudo 3D, right? So it kind of looked 3D, but it really was a 2D environment, 2D sprites, even though you could kind of move in and out of those planes. But still a really fun game to go out and play, if a bit slippery, if, it had a couple of control issues. But again, a really good game, and by an incredible developer, Traveler's Tales, that are still making games today. Really amazing games. So let's go ahead and jump into a bit of Sonic 3D. And I think this one also has, a 3D rendered intro for Sonic. So you can see, once again, the pinnacle of 3D animation, pre-rendered 3D animation, available to game developers at this time. This is what it looked like, right? Versus the Sonic Boom video that accompanies the Sega CD, which is a 2D animated one and is miles better, right, than the 3D animated one at that time. So here we go, Sonic. let's see. Let's jump down to start. Look, I mean, they're even creating these little 3D menus there to show you, oh, look, I got all this shading and textures on your menu screen, right? So here we are on the island, and let's go ahead and jump in if we can. All righty. And where are we? Where are you, Sonic? Oh, here we go. Green Grove Act 1. So, I mean, one of the things that the Saturn was accused of is not being able to do transparencies correctly, right? And so typically what you see is a lot of like, not garrote shaded, but oh my goodness, what is the phrase that I'm looking for there? Anyway, you can see that the transparencies are really meshes, right, instead of actual transparencies. But the Saturn was actually capable of doing real transparencies. It just took a lot for the system to do it, and developer had to be really really familiar with how to go ahead and implement them on the Sega Saturn. Dithered, that's the word I was looking for. Yay, thank you. Okay. So what you need to do here is roll around and hit the enemies and go in and pick up the birds, and then you can go ahead and bring them back up to this ring at the top. Come on, get up there. And when you do that, can I do that now? Oh no, I guess yeah. So when you jump into the ring, then you go ahead and get the birds there. So I need to collect 4 in the level to escape it. But you can see, you know, it's not a true 3D game that we wanted. It's an isometric game, but still a fun platformer to go, or a fun game to go ahead and jump into if you want to really dig into the back catalog of Sega Saturn titles. Not as bad as people made it out to be back in the day, but it's got a bit of that Marble Madness type of floaty bits to it, which can make it difficult to play. Just like that, stepping off that ledge there. Okay, and we're gonna rocket our way up here, and let me go ahead and hit that guy, and let's get that birdie, and we'll take these 2 up here. And let's see, can we jump in? There we go. As you can see, I only have 2 more left to complete the level. So that is just a touch of the Sega Saturn, the incredible, awesome, short-lived yet universally beloved Sega Saturn by people who collect. And it has just a wonderful back catalog of content that if you have any interest in the history of video games and game consoles, and specifically in the Sega lineup of consoles, definitely do yourself a favor. Pick up a Sega Saturn, go ahead and start collecting for it, which can get pricey, right? So, yeah, just an amazing system from a bygone era, and one whose games are still universally loved today. So with that, this brings us yet again to the end of another Rewind. Thank you so much for spending your Friday afternoon with me, and we do this every Friday afternoon from 3 to 4 p.m. Eastern right here on Twitch and on YouTube now. And we'll also make sure that next time it doesn't say that we're streaming a rerun, which is why we don't have anybody that showed up today, because everybody thinks that this is a rerun. So we're going to go back and do a Sega Saturn episode again at a later date, and also open it up for people to go in and win a copy of one of the launch games out of my personal collection. So in closing, if you are a game developer of any size from AAA to indies, make sure you head on over to aws.amazon.com/GameTech, where you can find out all information about the services, technologies, and offerings that AWS provides to help you on your cloud gaming journey. I also want to give a huge shout out to Waterflame for allowing me to use his music here on Rewind and all the other programs that I do on the AWS Game Tech channel. So make sure you head on over to his YouTube channel at Waterflame Music to check out the amazing music that he creates. And of course, if you care about video game history as much as I do, make sure you head on over to the Video Game History Foundation website at gamehistory.org. I happen to be a founding board member of this 501c3 organization whose mission is to go ahead and preserve video game history for generations to come. So once again, make sure you head on over to gamehistory.org to check out all of the incredible work that the team is doing at the Video Game History Foundation. And that brings us to the end once again of this episode. Thank you again so much for spending your time with me. Have a wonderful weekend, and we'll see you next week on Rewind.